That was a long drive. Today we're talking about remote controls. Here we are again, Santiago Peak. So as I said, we're talking about remote controls. And this is our remote control. It is from a company called Burke, and there's several different companies out there. Burke, I just totally blanked on them. Anyways, there's many different companies out there. The one that we use, like I said, is Burke, and they make the Arc Plus series of remote controls. Now, remote controls are very important. They are required by the FCC if you don't have an operator physically there at the site. So you have to have control over your radio station. If you don't, then you have to shut it down. A radio station that doesn't have a person maintaining control over the transmitter needs to have a remote control. So that's why remote controls are so important. It's probably one of the key pieces of a transmitter site is that remote control. Now, like I said, in the old days, radio stations would have somebody sitting there at the dials, making sure that the power was right and all the different stages of the transmitter were right, so that way the power was correct and the modulation was correct, and that was their job. If the station broadcast 24 hours a day, there was somebody there 24 hours a day. So every time the station signed on, they had to have somebody there. As you can imagine, that gets expensive after a while. So you would want to have some way of remote controlling that transmitter from your studio. Long time ago, back in the early days of radio, transmitter sites and studios were co-located. They're at the same spot. But that was not always practical, especially as FM started to come into play. FM transmitters and stations, well, we've talked about this before, line of sight. So they would put an FM transmitter up on top of a mountain, like here, Santiago Peak. So I put these Fortinets in, but I need to put the switch in underneath them, so I've just got to lift them up and kind of slide them underneath. Because this new switch is going to replace this switch, and this switch, well, I've only got 24 ports on it. Okay, 26 ports, but I've only got 24 ports. I need more, so I have a 48 port switch. So let's start putting that in. So let's continue our discussion about remote controls. Now, remote controls, like I said, are required, all that fun stuff. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's great. But what exactly does the remote control do? And how does it interface with all the rest of the broadcast equipment? So the remote control, the one that we have, which is from Burke, will interface through edge devices, if you will. So this is our remote control, the head unit part of it, if you will. And what this does is that this will connect to the other devices, which are the input unit, which will look at digital and analog measurements of circuits, if you will. And then it will also communicate with the command unit, which is a relay closure unit. And it will also communicate with, well, what Burke calls their Plus X device. And what that does is that communicates over the network, and will use SNMP, Simple Network Monitoring Protocol, which are basically short, small little data bursts, if you will, that will give status. It'll let you know what a meter reading is, or a status input, or allow you to send commands. Now the input unit, like I said, it will do analog and digital. Well, what does that mean? Analog is simply just a voltage. In this case, it's like a 0 to 5 or 0 to 10 volt signal. So let's say, I don't know, this box for whatever reason, or this box. Let's say this box. This box has analog meters on the back. Let's say it's a transmitter. And the transmitter will basically represent its amount of power output as a voltage out of the back. So I connect from that pin for the voltage to the input device, and when the transmitter is off or it's not sending out any power, it has got 0 volts on that circuit. But as you start ramping up that amount of power from the transmitter, then the voltage on that little line starts increasing. And when the transmitter gets to its full output, the maximum that it could do, that will be the maximum amount of voltage. And that's declared in the manual. It'll say in the manual, oh, this output is 0 to 5 volts, or 0 to 10 volts, or 0 to 2.5 volts, or whatever it ends up being. So it would go into that input device, it would measure that voltage, and it would say, oh, okay, it's 3.5 volts. And it would send that back to the Arc Plus Touch, the Arc Plus Touch, this head unit. And that will interpret that reading to be 300 watts, if you will. Let's say it's like a 500 watt transmitter or something like that. You calibrate it, you say this voltage is this reading. So I can say, oh, 769 watts is 4.7 volts on the little on the analog meter circuit. So that's kind of how that works. And then for the digital input, and by digital it just literally means on or off. On, off. That's all it is. So it's a relay closure, so there's high resistance or there's low resistance. High resistance when it's open, low resistance when it's closed. And that's essentially all that it's really just measuring. On the other direction, when it wants to send a command, let's say I want to turn this transmitter on or turn this transmitter off, or whatever reason I need to, as if I were pushing a button, this will tell the relay box, okay, relay number 4, close. And what it'll do is it'll close that relay for a certain amount, which is wired into the command side of the box, and when it sees that resistance go low, then it goes, oh, I need to execute this instruction. So that's kind of the basics. Now, how do I get a hold of this? How do I command this guy? Well, there's a couple of ways. I guess you could say 3 ways for this specific unit. Other units will have different ways of doing it, but they're all roughly about the same. We have that microwave link that goes down to the studios, and so I can watch it from software down there and see all the readings that this guy sees down there, and I can, even from that software, send commands up here. And it's encrypted, it's secured, it's basically like a VPN for it. It's protected, so intruders can't get in there and start causing havoc with your station. So that is remote controls. This guy is now, this new switch is mounted in the rack. Still need to move it to the right slot, the right location, but we'll get there. I'm gonna go apply power to this, and then once we apply power, let it do its boot up thing, and then I need to log into it and look and see how the ports are configured. They should already be mostly configured, but I kind of need to see where they are so that way I know which cable to move to where. Well, that was exciting, right? Moving all those cables over. I hope I put them all in the right spots. I guess we'll find out, won't we? It's good that I put that 48 port switch in because I need a whole lot more expansion. Because each rack has a smart power strip. That smart power strip has a network connection. The UPSs, there will be 2 in here. Each of them will have a network connection. The new cameras that I would eventually like to put in here and end up here to be able to watch what's going on outside and, you know, just to make sure that our stuff is safe, those need a network connection. So, I need a lot more network connections than I apparently had room for. 24 ports is just not enough in these days. Well, that's it for moving over the network switch. Basically, it was a lot of typing. Moving all the network cables over and just basically getting it moved over. All right, I'm going to clean things up here, load things back up in the truck, and head out. And off we go. Into the sunset, literally. Thanks for watching today. I really appreciate you being here and watching these videos. While you're here, watch some of the other videos that I have on my channel. I really appreciate that, and that kind of helps me see more topics of, you know, similar theme. And if you liked this video, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. I appreciate it. So, until next time, it's starting to get a little chilly out here. Until next time, stay warm.